look at somebody and say, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Now you're trying to figure out why in the world did he ask us to do that? Why in the world did he ask us to do that? Some Bible passages can be termed hard sayings. Today, we'll ponder two hard sayings. Hard saying passages challenge us. They disturb us. They prod us. They're not like the 23rd Psalm that gives us comfort and a sense of peace. They're not like the story of the Good Samaritan that gives us a nice lesson about how we ought to live. They're not like 1 Corinthians 13, that love chapter that gives us a sense of, oh, this is what love is. Hard passages jab us and prick us. 1 Kings 19 is a biblical account about what happened after the prophet Elijah challenged, defeated, and then massacred. That's a hard thing there. Massacred 450 imperial priests of Baal who were loyal to Queen Jezebel, the wicked wife of King Ahab of Israel. After Ahab told Jezebel what Elijah had done, Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah with a promise that she would have him killed. I'm going to get you, girl. Remember that movie, I'm going to get you, sucker? Now, Jezebel did it. I'm going to get you, sucker. Move on Elijah. That frightened him so much that he, according to the text, in 1 Kings 19 and 3, got up and fled for his life. How far did he flee? Elijah left Israel and went to Beersheba. Where is Beersheba? Beersheba is in Judah, the next country. But you need to understand, he didn't just go into Judah. Beersheba is in the southernmost part of Judah. Israel is the northern kingdom. Elijah not only left town, he left the country and got as far into the next country as he could run. And then he left his servant. And then ran another day alone. Found a tree in the middle of the wilderness, sat down in that tree, prayed to die, and went to sleep. It's in the 19th chapter, verses 4 through 5. It's not in the text, it's too much for us to read. Instead of death, Elijah is awakened by what? An angel. Wake up, wake up. Who directs him to wake up and take some nourishment. There's a divine meal. Food, water. Elijah wakes up, eats, drinks the water, and then goes right back to sleep. Because, you know, Elijah was planning to die. Okay? He was going to sleep his life away. The angel woke him up again. Said, get up, take some nourishment, otherwise the journey will be too much for you. So this time the prophet got up, ate, and then continued traveling according to the text for another 40 days and 40 nights, a long time, until he reached Horeb. Horeb, H-O-R-E-B, is the name that you also see in Scripture for Mount Sinai. There on Mount Sinai, there on Horeb, Elijah on that mountain finds himself a cave, goes into the cave, and according to our text, the word of the Lord came to him at verse 9, saying, what are you doing here, Elijah? Elijah was convinced that his effort to rescue his society from the wickedness of its oppressive rulers, Ahab and Jezebel, was futile. He believed he was the only prophet left. He knew Jezebel was out to kill him. He couldn't think how he could be any future usefulness to God. He was tired of being prophetic. He was tired of the nonsense and the wickedness. He was disgusted and depressed and distressed and felt alone. He'd had enough. It was time to throw in the towel. And so he went and found himself a cave, a hole in the ground. Hello. And that's where God found him. That's where God found that tired, scared, depressed prophet and posed this question. Not in a stormy wind, not in a fiery rage, not in an earthquake. He doesn't get a burning bush. It silence. God questions. What are you doing here, Elijah? Maybe you could say, what are you doing here, Elijah? What are you doing here, Elijah? The prophet's answer was clear and straightforward. I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant. They've thrown down your altars. They've killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left. In other words, I confronted oppressive rulers. I kept faith with you despite being outnumbered, outfinanced, with no army to back me up. I've been very zealous for you in the face of state-sanctioned social injustice throughout the society. I've been so effective that the queen has set a death warrant on my head, marked me for death as an enemy against the state. I'm a national security threat. And you're going to ask me what I'm doing here. But instead of a commendation, God asked the question again. What are you doing here, Elijah? Why are you in a hole in the ground on Mount Sinai, a religious site? Why are you so far from home? Why are you so far from the people of Israel and the oppressive rulers I sent you to confront? Why are you so far from the moral and the social and the ethical controversies and the conditions that are plaguing the people? What are you doing here, Elijah? That's a hard saying. That's a hard saying. It didn't get any easier because Elijah then heard the following words from God. Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, you shall appoint Hazael as king over Aram. Aram is a name for Syria, okay? Remember, Damascus is in Syria. Also, you shall appoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, as king over Israel. Hello, king of Israel is a guy named Ahab with a wife named Jezebel, okay? Elijah is told by God, look, I want you to go back and appoint a new king who's going to make Jezebel even madder. And you shall anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat of Abel-Hamelech, as prophet in your place. In other words, you ain't the only one left. I got your back, but I also got your successor. I got your back up. I got your back and your back up. Rather than a pat on the back, this is not a pat on the back. God ordered Elijah back to work. He was ordered to leave Judah, leave the holy mountain, travel to Damascus, anoint a new king over Syria, then anoint another new king over Israel, then anoint Elijah as his successor, go back to work. Instead of a commendation, Elijah got a new work assignment. Heavier load. God ordered him to recruit and support new leaders who would mount a new political and prophetic confrontation, a counteroffensive against the wicked regime of Ahab and Jezebel. What are you doing here, Elijah? That's one hard saying. Let's go for two. The gospel reading from Luke is rarely studied. It's rarely read. It's rarely preached. Oh, yeah, we read about the mustard seed. But we don't read about those verses beginning at verse 7. You have probably never had anybody preach to you about the word that Jesus said about, hey, after the prophets said, the apostles, who were the people that Jesus sent out to do healing in his name, after the apostles wanted Jesus to increase their faith, Jesus made two very tough statements. First, he challenged the strength of their faith. If you had the faith of a mustard seed, hello? In other words, you're talking about increase your faith. If you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could tell this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted into the sea, and it would obey you. In other words, Jesus bluntly said, your faith is too puny to make a prophetic difference. And then he doubled down and indicted their sense of duty. Jesus asked whether any of them would tell a servant who'd been outdoors plowing or tending sheep in the field to have a seat rather than to direct the servant to prepare and serve supper before taking a meal themselves. Notice the hard saying. Do you thank the slave for doing what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all you were ordered to do, say, we are worthless slaves. We have done only what we ought to have done. Now, that's a hard saying. Put Elijah's situation and this word together from Jesus, and you got two very, very hard sayings. Do you thank the slave for doing what was commanded? What are you doing here, Elijah? These passages challenge prophetic people for reasons that are obvious but are not comfortable. That's why we call them hard sayings. Like Elijah, we live in a wicked society. Our political leaders are oppressive. Imperial politics, imperial commerce, imperial religion have conspired and colluded so much now that the United States is led by someone viewed around the world as corrupt, disloyal, intemperate, pathologically dishonest, and blatantly oppressive. I didn't go to the end of my list, so I stopped there. However, President Trump did not mysteriously arrive on the scene to lead the United States. His personal and commercial racism, his white male supremacy and patriarchy, his racist and misogynist bigotry, his homophobia and transphobia, his xenophobia, his dishonesty, his pathological penchant for violence, his oppressiveness, and his fear of others are shaping national policy for one reason, because white people who call themselves evangelical Christians and white supremacists voted together, as white Christian nationalists to embrace him and elect him as President of the United States. And that didn't just start last year. And so we come to the question, what are you doing here, Elijah? What are we doing about it? Have we, like Elijah, convinced ourselves that the forces of injustice are too powerful for us to make a difference? Are we worn out and depressed and disgusted from work done and wounds suffered in the struggle for love and justice, so that we just, as Fannie Lou Hamer says, sick and tired of being sick and tired? Are we taking self-imposed leaves of absence from openly confronting and condemning and counteracting practices of hate and fear and deception and unbelief? Have we simply gone AWOL, absent without leave, from being prophetic people for God's love and justice? What are you doing here, Elijah? white supremacists on Friday surrounded peaceful protesters against white supremacy, armed with torches, and attacked them with mace, pepper spray. Yesterday, a young woman was run over and killed, and 19 other people were wounded in Charlottesville by a young man who allegedly traveled from Ohio to Charlottesville to attend the white supremacist rally. Today, some of the people who attended that white supremacist rally are going to show up in somebody's church. As the white supremacy movement grew in the United States over the past years, many people who claim to be followers of Jesus pretended to ignore it. I said pretended to ignore it. You couldn't ignore it. Swastikas, Confederate flags, racist websites. They pretended it didn't matter when Southern Baptists and other fundamentalist preachers supported and urged their congregations to vote for the only candidate who was endorsed and embraced by the Ku Klux Klan. And after that candidate, whose name is Donald John Trump, won the 2016 presidential election, many folks did like Elijah. They went into self-imposed and self-sanctioned exile. But they didn't take exile to another country. Instead, many people who should be standing up and speaking out and mounting a prophetic counteroffensive to hate and fear and violence and deception and white supremacy and bigotry have exiled themselves in religious caves. Elijah went to Mount Sinai. He went to the same mountain where Moses got the law. Let me break it down to Elijah went to church. Many people have found religious caves in church. And they flocked to those religious caves where they suck thumbs of praise and worship. Hello. They get their praise and worship thumb. And they suck on their praise and worship thumb. And they leave and go back home and don't do a thing about the hate and the fear and the deception and the lies and the violence that are violating the law and love of God. But they stuck on praise and worship. I got my praise on. They suck on their praise and worship thumbs while people who need health care are being threatened with loss of it. They suck on their praise and worship thumbs while people who need to have a chance to get into this country are being banned, and people who are in this country legally are being threatened with expulsion. They suck on their praise and worship thumbs while people come up with new ways of mass incarceration. You may not have noticed it last week or two, but Attorney General Jeff Sessions now says he's going to renew the effort to do civil forfeitures. What's civil forfeiture? That's where the police take your property even if you haven't been accused of a crime because they think you got some stuff or know some stuff. So they stop you. They think they found something. They take your car. They take your cash. You're never charged. If you're charged, you never tried, but they still got your car and your cash. Meanwhile, folks are sucking on their praise and worship thumb while people are plotting to try to destroy public education. And they're recruiting white men and white boys to the heresy of white supremacy. Some people have retreated not to religious caves, but to caves of resignation. Like Elijah, they've decided that the battle for justice is lost and there's nothing they can do but duck and cover, cower in defeat and fear and resignation and wait to die. As persons and as society, they just wait until the Lord calls them home. I don't know if I can do anything. I can't take any more. Lord, help me. Come get me, please. And some people who were once zealous for justice have decided they've done enough. These folks have retreated into retirement caves of rocking chairs and recliners and retreats and leisure travel and other activities. They can tell you about their last trip, their next trip, the trip they had, but they can't tell you about what they're going to do about the injustice. From those caves, they hope to escape and evade our prophetic obligation to continue God's work of love and justice and truth and hope and peace. And the good news is, you wanted to know, God will not let us quit. And God will not quit on us. The good news is no matter how far we run, what was it Sonny Liston used to say? You can run, but you can't hide. No matter how far we run, we cannot hide from the Spirit of God that will call us out of our cave. Will find us at the cave. Will find us no matter how far we've run, no matter where we've hidden, and will say to us, what are you doing here, Elijah? No matter how or where we retreat, despite our sense of resignation or fear or defeat, the God of love and justice will not give up on us. God will find us. No matter where or how we find caves of self-imposed exile, God knows where we are, and God gets there. What are you doing here, Elijah? What are you doing here, Elijah? The divine question to prophetic people hasn't changed. Only the name before the question mark. So look at somebody and say, what are you doing here, Elijah? Go home and look in the mirror and say, what are you doing here, Elijah? Instead of Elijah, insert your name. Call out to other prophetic people and ask the question, what are you doing here? Are we in praise and worship caves of personal piety when we should be fighting for love and justice? I'm not hating on praise and worship, but you praise and worship so you can go out and serve. You praise and worship so you can go out and work. If all you can do is get your praise on, then you don't have a praise and worship situation. You have a praise and self massaging situation. I almost said something, but I wasn't going to do that. Well, I will say it. This is an adult gathering. Some of us are guilty of moral, ethical, and spiritual masturbation. Hello? Where all our praise and worship is just, I'm just rubbing myself and hugging myself in the name of the Lord. And I don't care how much you engage in that kind of stuff, it produces no fruit. Hello? You can get a good feeling from it, okay? But you can't make any babies from it. You cannot produce babies. You cannot produce new growth from it. This is an adult sermon. Are we in self-absorbed caves of leisure and recreation when we should be engaged in God's counteroffensive against the forces of hate and fear and deception and violence and unbelief? The good news in the hard saying that Jesus uttered in John and Luke 17 is that God's response to our faithfulness is a call to more service, not less. Don't be surprised. Don't look at me crazy. Don't look at me crazy. That's true in everything else you've done in life. When you learned how to crawl, they didn't give you a prayer and say, hey, good for you. They said, now you got to learn to walk. When you learned arithmetic, they said, no, you go. No, we're going to introduce you to algebra. And when you learn algebra, we said, okay, now it's time for you to learn calculus. When you get your foundation, you don't get to sit down, you get assigned to another course with harder problems. And it is both morally and ethically foolish for us to expect God to give us a prize because we have arrived. Hello. I used to hear folks say, I've been in the church all these years. I've been on, okay, yeah, okay, good. So you've got a pew pad with your butt imprinted on it, but nothing else to show for it. The God of Elijah and the God of Jesus calls us to leave our caves, to leave our couches, to leave our recliners, to leave our leisurely lifestyles, and to get back into the struggle for love and truth and hope and justice and peace, because God has more work for us to do. Well, you're going to say, Reverend, what can I do? I'm glad you asked the question. What can I do? Go to this website. This is WORR.org. This is WORR.org. That's what I'm saying. Read it. Say it again. This is. Now you want to know what WORR means. Good. I'm glad you asked. It stands for Weeks of Righteous Resistance. Weeks of Righteous Resistance. Go to that website. You will find there that other prophetic people are bravely and faithfully accepting our moral and ethical duty to continue the struggle for justice. They have said, we're not going to stay in our caves, we're not going to turn our backs, we're not going to be quiet, we're not going to abandon our post. We are going on offense for God. We're going on offense for love. We're going on offense for faith. We're going on offense for truth. We're going on offense for hope. We're going on offense for justice. We're going on offense for peace, because God has more work for us to do. We got to leave our caves and also put our minds, our moral, our ethical, our other resources to work. Don't hide from the hate, and stop hiding from the haters. Hello. I know folks, I get so tired of reading the mean things people write online, seeing the mean stuff on TV. Stop hiding from it. Don't turn away. Face it. Go to the websites of the white supremacists. Yes. There's one called the Daily Stormer. www.dailystormer.com. It is an American neo-Nazi group, an American neo-Nazi and white supremacist movement site that yesterday published an article calling the death of the young woman who was struck by the car in Charlottesville self-defense. Self-defense. The man drove her down in self-defense. Why? He said, because the windshield must have been, was cracked, so somebody must have thrown a brick. Go and read it, because you need to know the lies in order for you to confront the lies with truth. This is the time for prophetic people to mount a resurgent effort, not to go in retreat and hide in our caves. The Spirit of God is calling us. There are more battles to fight. There are new alliances to make. We have more work to do. So what are you doing, Elijah? Amen.